Patrick.
And
This is
Yes,
But Why
Podcast. Thank you, Jeremy, so much for being on the podcast with us. We really appreciate you coming in. So I have been teaching a theater camp for kids, which involves a lot of like projecting and telling them to talk louder.
Yeah.
You mentioned you like to talk soft. Do you do film? Because that's really where the talking soft is the key.
Yeah, no, I have a film major. You know, I have a film degree from the University of Texas, but I was usually directing. I don't do a lot of film acting. It's probably a self-esteem thing.
Staying quiet?
Yeah, I think once I'm on stage and I know I have to be loud, then it goes away.
Oh, okay.
But in like one-on-one conversations or in podcasts, which, I do about one of these a week.
Sure.
Not really. Yeah.
Well, you're about to run out of them then.
Yeah, in Austin.
That's a heavy clip to keep.
I know. I fly to New York and Chicago, LA every week to do podcasts for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want to know about Austin improv.
100 people do.
And I teach middle school theater, and that's just an endless well of information and anecdotes for podcasts all over the world.
Actually, to be honest, it kind of is.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm super interested in that now. That's super awesome. Yeah, so my camp that I'm teaching right now is 14 to 18.
Nice.
And I previously finished a camp for 12 and 13-year-olds.
Yeah,
and I found that the 12 and 13-year-olds were way easier to come to comedy than high school. They
don't have the awareness. They have enough awareness and world experience to play characters and interact with each other, but they don't know. And I see this toward the end of 8th grade because I teach 6th through 8th. And once especially the girls start earlier, and I hate to say things like that because I'm pretty progressive about gender and trying to not be heteronormative with everything, but girls, they start to realize, if I can judge these other people, then that means other people can judge me. And then they sort of start to go into a little shell. And then the boys catch up later. But 6th and 7th grade and the first part of 8th grade, like, they're just down for whatever. And you can really get them to have fun and jump into new experiences and do crazy stuff in theater class. And sometimes, it's kind of in the theater teaching world, everyone wants to be in high school. Yeah. Because they think that middle school is just, they're less capable or, less experienced. And that's true, but I just enjoy that they're more malleable. They're much more game.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't really start, developing, self-image issues until high school when people start loading them on. They just start piling them onto you day one when you get there. 8th grade is that last little bit of confidence in yourself and who you were before all of a sudden you're going to let a bunch of outsiders tell you who you're going to be.
And I feel like acting in high school and college and for adults in general, a lot of it is about stripping away that veneer, and just really reminding people that it doesn't matter. You can just get up there and do whatever.
Yeah.
Because we forget that.
Yeah, because, on the other end, when you're learning improv, when you decide to, start taking improv, when you're, 30, that's because, all that shit is so heavy that you're, glad to just drop it off.
Yeah.
And it's just, and who gives a shit who is there to see you do it? Because it's, you've been playing that game since high school. You know? And it's
it can be a big coming out for people, to try to get past all of that. Take improv classes.
I wonder, though, in the larger, if you were to continue further to go to LA and get into quote-unquote show business, there's a lot of stuff you got to protect yourself from with that, and a lot of stealing yourself that you need to do to deal with the rejection of that and the, sort of the game playing that is involved in the business end of it. So it's you get through middle school, you're like, oh, great, I'm creative. And then you go to high school and you're like, oh man, people are judging me for being creative. Yeah. Then you get to your 20s and you're like, wait, I can go to a room where people aren't going to judge me? This is great. And then you're like, let me move to LA. Everyone judges you again.
Crushed.
It's just this, like, you mentioning taking off, and like, I think of like a weighted vest, like you put it on to be like, okay, I can deal with this. Or like the bodybuilders who put weight on their body so that when they lift, it's like extra. It's like,
I'm thinking about the big blanket they put on you to x-ray you. X-ray your face, and they put the big... I mean, because I think about that, and as I talk to people who I know who are moving, I'm all like, all right, just remember that you're okay. Remember
like,
who you are.
Try to write down some positive thoughts on the wall so that when everything is super hard, you can go, guys, don't forget, this is fun. Like, okay. Yeah, well, it's like this weird up and down.
And I've lived in Chicago and New York and LA, and I've done a little bit of, the improv scenes there, and it's totally different.
Oh, yeah, each one of the cities?
Well, different from Austin.
Rank them. I'm just
No.
I can do that.
Just kidding.
I was like, you don't have to do that.
Rank them, burn bridges.
I don't really care about bridges anymore. That's the other thing. I'm like, I don't produce Out of Bounds anymore. Like, I'm not the executive producer. I'm on the board of directors. So, I used to feel like I had to, like, be nice to everyone and have a certain, like I was sort of like a figurehead, and so I couldn't. I would hold back on Facebook, like talking, like being critical about comedy, even if it was just somebody famous that I was never going to even interact with, just because that was the face of the festival. But now I don't have to do that, and it sounds kind of shitty, but it feels nice to not have to glad hand people that I don't like or I don't agree with their politics or how they approach the art form, and I can just sort of be like, I don't have to even talk to this person anymore. And it feels good, but
there's something hard about having to be a leader in a community, It
was tough, and the festival just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I had kids, I had one kid at the time, and it just got to be too much. And I had done it for like 13 years. How old?
Wow. Yeah, 13 years. Dang. Yeah. How old are your children?
I have a 4-year-old daughter, and let's see, I think my son is about 16 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, like, for a second it was escaping you, and then it's like, oh yeah, and that time when you're still just counting them in months.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna be like, geez.
You're just like, he's one.
My baby turned 1 on May 11th. He's 1 now.
He's 1.
That's you can do whatever math you'd like after that. And next year on May 11th, he'll be 2.
Yeah. When he starts talking and doing that, like, I'm 2 3/4 stuff. That's fine.
Hey, man, if my kid can figure out fractions at 2, I'll take it.
That is good.
I said shit like that all the time, and I didn't have any grasp of fractions. That was just me. It's like I'm like 1/16 Cherokee too. Like that kind of shit. The same amount of math goes into that.
Yeah.
Oh man. So you have 2 kids now. Are you actively still involved in improv, or did you step back from Out of Bounds and other things to focus on your teaching at the middle school and your kids and stuff?
It became more about career and family, and quite honestly, so I went to Chicago after college. About a year after college, I went to Chicago in 2003, and I wanted to, be an improviser or be an actor or whatever. And I started taking classes at Second City. Didn't really like it. I was 23, so I thought that I should be teaching the class. And I had a decent amount of success in Austin with my first group. And so I kind of felt like it's completely wrong. I admit that, but I felt like people should have known who I was and like respected my accomplishments. At
22.
Of course they didn't, and that's totally fine, and I get that now. But it was difficult for me to take at the time, and so I didn't want to do any other classes. Like I didn't want to start over, level 1 at IO. I didn't. This is one of those things. I didn't agree with the philosophy of the annoyance, so I was just sort of like, I don't dig that.
I think that's a totally valid reason to not do classes somewhere, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not wanting to do level 1 again, I'm like, who couldn't go for a little refresher? But the idea of finding a theater and being like, oh, you know, the way they look at it isn't the way I look at it, that's valid.
Yeah.
Absolutely, especially when there's a breadth of options in Chicago.
Yeah.
Why force yourself to do something when you're like, this hurts me to do it?
Yeah.
Do the thing that you dig on.
Like, well, they do minstrel shows over here.
Yeah,
so
not
this
really
way.
I'm
gonna go down the street.
I'm surprised that training center is still open, by the way. Do the minstrel shows in Chicago.
There's a lot of things still open in Chicago, so I feel like probably.
So you started at Second City. Was that was it purely because you were like, I don't want to start over, or was there rules with that within their program that kind of didn't jive with you?
Well, so I auditioned. They have 2 like levels. There's like level 1 through 6, and then A through whatever F. And you can, if the top level is called conservatory, so you can audition to get into that. So I did, and I got into level A. So I skipped all of the first half of the classes. Mm-hmm. So that was nice. Yeah. And, you know, doing the class, it was 8 weeks, and I did the first 4. And then the second half of it, I got this gig in China to go. I was in China for a month doing these English language videos. You know how, like, when you take a French class, they have the videos of, like, Je m'appelle Jean, and it's speaking slowly, and it's like, oh, okay, my name is John. So then you know that. So that's what I was, the English version of that in China. Oh. And we were there, we shot for 3 weeks, and then we did a little tour of a few cities. But then I came back to Chicago, and I was like, they're going to make me take this class again because I missed half of them. Sure. And I didn't really enjoy it. Oh, you know what? Actually, I did retake it. So the first time I had this teacher, Jean Villepique, who's now in LA. She's awesome. I loved her. She was great. But then I took I took it again. I'm just now remembering this. I took it again, and the teacher was Norm Hawley, who was the director of the school, the whole school. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to learn from the guy who runs the whole school. And he was an asshole. Sure. Which I can now, if I was still running out of bounds, I wouldn't say that. Sure. But he was terrible. At the end of a scene, he'd be like, I think you should have done this, this, and this, and was very specific. Or like, he would stop the scene and go, why don't you do this? And it would be something that's like a funny idea that he had. He's like showing the class how funny he is and how good he is at improv. Yeah. While he stands off to the side and smokes. And he would fucking eat sandwiches during the class, and he's like smoking, and so that totally soured me on the whole school. I'm like, if this guy's running the school, then fuck this. Yeah. Wow. So then, and my whole thing was like, you know, I'm more into narrative improv than character improv, and there wasn't really anything like that in Chicago at the time, and I don't know if there even is now, where they're really focused on storytelling and like the Keith Johnstone kind of aesthetic of improv. So I was like, well, I can try to change this system, you know, because my head is gigantic and I can do whatever I want and I'm awesome. Yeah. And, you know, there are articles about me in the Austin Chronicle. So, you know, that's why I thought I was a total badass. So before you went to Chicago, just to bring it back, you went to college at UT, you said, and then you started out in, was it the original incarnation of The Hideout or previous to that? Yeah, so I started, the first thing that I did was I auditioned for a Monk's Night Out troupe, and Monk's Night Out used to perform at the Velveeta Room, and I think they were doing like Friday and Saturday short form, you know, what you'd call now bar prov, and that was one of my first exposures to live improv. I'd seen it on Who's Line, like, you know, I used to watch the Comedy Channel before it was Comedy Central. Yeah. When they split they used to share the channel with CNBC, I think, or some money news show. It literally just was, they just went by the Comedy Channel? It was 12 hours of business news,
and then it
switched. And then it switched to the complete opposite, the comedy channel. And so I was like soaking that up in the 80s.
It's mixed messages.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, like
I remember I would like turn it on at 5, and I'd be like, damn it, they're still talking about annuities.
Still lame stuff.
Fuck annuities. I want to see who's live.
This guy in a graph.
I want to see
talking about.
Where's Wayne Brady? goddammit.
Is this news program for real right now? You know, like that's a weird
good
transition.
That would have been fun if they would have done a transitional show.
Yeah,
just in between.
Just
they improvise the news
slowly. Well, it would like I'm seeing it like bleeding over. Like it would just slowly transition.
Yeah, like
and then by the end of the hour, suddenly he's wearing a rainbow wig. Yes.
Colin Mockery's doing the weather.
Ryan Stiles comes out and does sports.
And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, we're watching the show. I'm in it. It's so
oh my god.
Oh man. If only like television worked like our imaginations.
Yeah.
Like where things could come
like,
together.
Yeah, it's like Mr. Show, you know, just kind of like we've gone inside 4 TVs and now we're all having fun, you know?
And it's over. And we'll start over next time. Yeah. So that was my first exposure to improv, and then I was going down to Monk's Night Out when I was 18. You know, I was a senior in high school, and I would drive down from the suburbs, where, you know, because I was in Austin, and we'd see the shows there on the weekends, and it was just like totally blew my mind, and I loved it. So I auditioned for that, and I got into what they were calling like audition troops. And it was, so we picked a name, and we were Los Paranoias, and we played at the Big Stinkin' Festival in, I think, 98. Yeah. In 1998, the Big Stinkin' International Improv and Sketch Festival, which was the festival before Out of Bounds. And in that group were Chuy Zarate, who's, you know, still doing improv, lots of it. Shayna Merlin, who started a group, you know, who started a whole training center with Merlin Works. And who else was in that group? A few other people who aren't doing improv anymore, but that's where I first met those people, you know, 20 years ago. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So they broke that group up, and then they absorbed a couple of those people into Monk's Night Out and said, we don't want anybody else.
Sure.
And then they had auditions again. This is how they did this is their system. It's a pretty cool system. So I went with a bunch of my friends who I was doing improv with at my school at Westwood, and we weren't even a group. We were just sort of like just fucking around, you know, after school or whatever.
Oh, like on your own in high school?
Yeah.
Not like with a teacher or a class or anything?
No, we would just get together in a garage or whatever and play improv games.
Great.
I was like, oh, this is really fun. So then I was like, we should try to get into one of these audition groups together. So it was me and like 5 people, Aaron Syons, Ben Sterling, John Benner. Some of those people are still in Austin Improv. Maybe Jeff Amos was with us, and we all went down and auditioned, and they passed on all of us. And so I took that as like, you know, a big strike against me, and I was like, well, we're going to start our own group. You know, fuck them, we don't need them and all this. So we did, and it was Well Hung Jury, and then we did that for about 6 years, up into all the way through college for me at UT, and we were just doing tons of shows and lots of promotion. And toward the end of 1998, the people that started the Hideout, well, the person that started the Hideout, Sean Hill, auditioned for Austin Theater Sports, which is Keith Johnstone's, that's his whole kind of system, the theater sports narrative.
That's different than
improv.
The comedy sports ones.
Yes.
That was a franchise that was different, right?
So theater sports it started in Calgary at the Loose Moose Theater by Keith Johnstone, who's from England but found a home in Canada doing improv there. So he started up this thing called Theater Sports, which was, there were a number of formats that he had, but one was 2 teams, and they compete, you know, scenes, and they challenge each other, and either judges score them or the audience scores them, and at the end there's a winner, right? So it was kind of like sport, but kind of like theater. So Theater Sports. And then later Comedy Sports stole that idea and gave it a new name, and there's a guy in Milwaukee that started that.
Okay, there was no direct connection to theater sports?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe he was a performer somewhere that was doing theater sports or something, but he was very aggressive about franchising it.
Yeah, that's what I know about comedy sports.
That's a lot of
franchise aspect of it, it being everywhere,
and that's a lot of people's first interactions with improv. Their first time seeing it was comedy sports, and they're like, "Oh, this is just like Who's Line." So I've seen that on TV, so they made that connection. Comedy sports super successful and still going on. He eventually got sued. Maybe he was like jacking up the licensing rights or something, and so a bunch of people dropped the comedy sports name and switched, and then he got sued, and it was kind of this big legal battle, and so there were a bunch of groups that broke off and formed their own companies that were basically doing the same show, but not comedy sports. And
because when I first moved to town, the comedy sports was still happening, and maybe about 2 years after I moved here, it kind is
that when it was at
friends.
The mall? North Cross Mall? Or?
Yeah, I think so, because I had a few friends who did plays and musicals that did comedy sports, and I met them through the plays and musicals, and they were like, "Oh, you do improv at that kind of place? We do comedy sports." And then I remember seeing them when I was like, "Hey, when's your next show?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's not a thing anymore. It closed." So I was like, "Whoa, okay, great. Weird. Sorry. Come over to me. Come hang out with me." But they were like, "Yeah, I'm going to stick with the musicals." And I was like, "Okay, great. Do that." But it's interesting how, there's been so much.
Yeah, well, that was a moment, right? So theater sports, I auditioned for that at the end of '98, and again, Shayna Merlin, and then like tons of people who were still improvising were in that first group of about 15 or so, maybe 16, 20 people who were in Austin theater sports, and we were just performing. Like, we would do late nights at Hyde Park. We did a run of shows at the Public Theater, or was it the Public Theater? No, the Public Domain, which was on Congress, which is actually, I think the building is still unoccupied, but it was a theater. The upstairs was a theater 20 years ago, and it closed, and it's still all boarded up and weird. It's next to the subway at in between 8th and 9th, I think.
Whoa.
It's strange. Every time I walk by, I'm like, wow, I did one of my first improv shows there. But it's just sort of weird, like, why would the landlord close it and then not put anything in there, or not try to get anyone...
Well, if I've learned anything recently because I've been doing theater up at Georgetown Palace Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And they bought a brand new space to add to their, rehearsal space, because their summer camps are insane. There's 12 happening at once.
Nice.
Kids everywhere, just all doing theater. It's really great, but awesome. They definitely need more room.
Yeah.
And I was like, last summer they told me about it. So in this summer it wasn't open. I was like, what's going on? And they said it's just being held back from historical permits. People are saying this building is historical, so we need to do this before it gets renovated, blah, blah, blah. So if that building is super old, and it being close to the Capitol probably, and that area seems to be old school buildings, it's probably just held up in some sort of weird limbo of
bureaucracy.
Yeah, where the guy would love to turn it into something, but it can't be districted for whatever.
Yeah. Well, that same thing kind of happened with the Hideout, because, Sean Hill, he had a little bit of money, and he signed a lease for that space, and then he was running into all kinds of historical society issues, and you can't put, he had to get a special permission to put neon. The Hideout is a neon sign. Yeah. It kind of looks like the state sign. Mm-hmm. He had to, spend a bunch of money and go through all these processes to put neon on Congress, because they don't want it to become Times Square, I guess.
Crazy neon. Ruining worlds.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, wow. Again, that was 20 years ago, so maybe that's different now.
I don't know.
It's probably only stronger.
yeah, they're more against it.
This hate for neon.
Yeah, you never know. Who knows? Neon signs do sort of speak to a sort of lower class situation.
That's
I don't know.
True, yeah.
Even though I get why it's it's flashy and fun and it draws people into your business, sure. But maybe to an older generation, it still is that's where the speakeasies were.
Yeah. They didn't need neon. They stayed open. They didn't even need the liquor license.
They just paid a craftsman to bend a gas inside of a tube and, into a funny, cool calligraphy and, trash trash. Like, what? Come on.
Might as well say live nudes.
I'm sorry, I thought this was a diner. You know?
I'd love a place that doesn't have live nudes to have a live nude sign up.
Yeah. Well, we could,
I mean, not right now in this world, but yeah.
It's a hospital.
That's my joke. My friend has a joke that every nails place is just called Nails because there's like a standard neon sign for nails.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're all a front for something, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Everywhere I've ever gone in, I'm like, something else is happening in this place.
I'll take a mani-pedi and a bump of Coke, please.
Yeah.
I think it's way worse than that, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. Way more
like, do you want to buy some children? Because if not, get out of here. You're wasting our time.
I just want you to buff my cuticles.
You're like, what's happening back there? Are they printing money? What's going on?
Those parking lots are full always, too, is what I noticed. Like, they're always, like, way too full. I'm like, they're fighting chickens in the back or something. That's what I always think.
Well, there's also 45 employees that work there, and you're all like, how is this financially solvent? Like,
yeah. Well, did you see Better Call Saul, where his office is
lives in the back? Yeah.
With the cucumber water, and they're like, no, you can't. The cucumber water is for customers only.
I love that.
And I
like the idea of making all your employees just park in the front.
There you go.
So it just seems like the place is popping all the time.
Or have some employees that look like, secret shoppers that are in there getting manicures, but they're just, that'd be sneaky.
They're going to have to return those nails later.
Yeah.
Other than Undercover Boss, I don't think they have secret shoppers anymore. I hear tell of it being a job, but I don't believe it.
They have it in the restaurant industry somewhat with like large franchises, and I can just speak to that for.
But that's still Undercover Boss-ish,
Wendell, are you like an Applebee's? Do you travel the country going to Applebee's?
Not Applebee's.
You should work at Applebee's. Well, seems like a good transition.
Yeah.
Would you like to eat good in the neighborhood every week?
The neighborhood grill. Gotta make sure everybody's there.
Now he works at a fancy chain.
See, if I were going to do that, I would be the guy that goes and judges those Applebee's that turn into like a dance club at 11 on a Friday. I don't know.
I love those.
Yeah, like I don't know.
A disco night?
If George Appleby somewhere was just like, you know what? The youth are not coming into the neighborhood.
George Appleby.
Because that's a very unofficial decision that is sweeping the nation, I think. You never see anything about that on the commercials. It's never like, and also just hang out and karaoke might just happen. I don't know, some asshole might just bring some speakers into the middle of the bar, Because that happened back where I grew up in South Carolina, and then I found an Applebee's here that was doing that.
You're seeking them out.
Yeah. Well, like the one back home in South Carolina, I'm pretty sure you can still smoke in. And you can smoke at the bar, but the bar is the center of the restaurant. Which I was like, that's amazing. It's like right by the bathrooms, know. It's like there's no ducking these fucking Newport fumes.
Oh man, that's
Would you like smoking or near smoking?
Yeah, you want secondhand?
Yeah.
It was just like, we can give you a pack of smokes, or you could just breathe it in secondhand.
Might make the food taste better. I don't know.
That ashy flavor's in everything. It's funny, Applebee's was not a big restaurant. I grew up in Boston, and Applebee's, I don't think I ever saw one.
Boston Market.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's what everybody eats. Yeah.
Boston Market was not even invented until I moved away. It was not even a thing until after I went to college. And then when I was in Dallas in college, people were like, "Oh, so you go to Boston Market all the time?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is."
There was not. Are you telling me that there was not just one giant market in the center of Boston that was just slinging mediocre roast beef all over the place?
Well, yes, it was called Faneuil Hall, which apparently I recently found out that Mr. Faneuil, huge racist, so it'll probably be changed to Boston Market very soon.
I was going to say, that was what Boston Market went with first, and then they were like, ooh, never mind, let's,
in 1996, people were less concerned about having racist names on their businesses, though. Now it's like, ooh, hey, all of Boston's just being taken down and putting new signs up. They're like, we really like everyone, even though it's a lie. Oh, yeah. No, Boston's a rough place, sorry. I was like, if the audience knows anything, it's how much I don't like Boston.
That's a consistent theme here.
Oh, yeah.
Our sports team, we're the eclectic every people now. All right, let's get out there, guys.
The eclectic every people. Can we please, dear sports people, could we please Please have a team called that.
Yeah, get one football team just called the Eclectic Every People. And
they just wear like rainbow outfits, and when they dance, they like dance really wild.
They don't even play the game. They just dance while the ball goes past them.
They get cucumber water.
Yet somehow they win every time. Who knew?
Hey, fun wins. That's
Everyone
how they
gets
win.
a trophy. Fun wins.
That's how.
Well,
oh my god!
So I want to take it back real quick since we're talking about weird things in weird locations. You had asked if comedy, if the comedy sports was happening at North Cross Mall, and I just wanted to ask, like, when you say that, do you mean like they had bought like a spot in the mall? Okay, like they weren't just putting on shows in the food court. Is what I
it was
thought
legit.
You meant. Okay,
it was a legit business.
Okay,
run by a guy I know, Les McGeehee, who's still in Austin doing stuff. I don't really know exactly what he's doing now, but anyway, he owned the franchise rights to it.
Gotcha.
And they did Thursday through Saturday, tons of shows, and it's family friendly. That's kind of the other angle of comedy sports. But they selling popcorn and concessions, and the wall had that horrible faux painting thing. It was like a yellow wall with an orange. You dip the sponge in the orange and tap it on. It looked horrible.
It was all over the place in the 90s.
Oh god, it was horrible. But Tyler Bryce, I don't know if he's in Austin. He was actually in the first live improv show that I saw at Comedy Sports. I went on a date with Stacey Osborne, who dumped me later. But anyway,
so she's not your wife. Good to know. Okay.
But we went there on a double date actually, and they needed a volunteer, so I came up on stage, and we did a dub. It was like a dubbing scene, and I got a laugh, and I was like, "This is fucking amazing." And I even said to them, and I met them after, and I was like, "I'm gonna come every weekend. This is amazing." And then I discovered Monk's Night Out, which was more edgy, more about my 17, 18-year-old sensibilities, because they said penis and cock and pussy and all that. They said that on stage.
I was really hoping you were just going to say a bunch of synonyms.
I could have just kept going.
Penis, cock, dick. It's just all dick jokes. Now that I'm thinking about it.
It kind of was.
It's the Velveeta Room. Isn't that what they do right now?
Yeah.
I thought it was just a dick joke place.
Yeah, I think they're going to change the name. Yeah.
Come and laugh at your slong off.
Cheese dick.
Yeah.
Cheese dick.
Cheese dick
Everyone
lounge.
loves that.
Yeah.
Cheese dick lounge. I'm sending an email right now. This is a great idea, guys.
Good luck with that.
Well, what's crazy is that's not the first time I've heard the word cheese dick, and now I'm like wondering why I've heard that before.
It's not a South Carolina thing.
That's not a South Carolina
Maybe it's a regional
thing.
Texas thing.
That's a very inventive way to insult. That's a very personally informed way to insult one person.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like you saw something at the gym, like at the Y when you guys were changing.
Oh god!
I know
something because
you have
like
a cheese dick. You know what it is? It sounds like cheese stick. That's why it's it feels familiar, but it's still kind of new. Cheese stick.
Cheese stick. Okay.
Stick.
Yeah. It's the same as string dick. You just peel it off.
Yeah, that's how it works.
String
Goes
dick.
good with apple juice. I don't know.
Amy's making notes this whole time, just for you listeners. She's taking notes, and I hope she's writing down cheese dick, cheese.
I was going to say
cheese dick.
She's scribbling like a madman over there.
No, I realized I forgot to tell you that I do take notes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I just imagined you drawing a big penis with its peeling off. Yeah.
See, I just wonder if that's like insulting, like a smell. Or,
yeah.
You know, like if that's like insulting, like
or secretion.
Yeah, I was like, I bet it's the stuff.
Fermunda, the Fermunda cheese. Yeah.
cheese dick.
Nice word, cheese dick.
Oh my god! So you're doing theater at Austin Theater Sports.
And he opened he renovated the Hideout and spent a ton of money and totally made it into an amazing, awesome place.
Despite all the possible things in his way, he did it, which is great.
Yep.
Everybody else is being held back by these things. You can do it.
Well, if you have money, you can do it. I mean, that's really...
Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're opening a space, here's hoping you have some money.
Yes, absolutely.
That's definitely the key.
And a lot of energy and a lot of longevity, because eventually he sold it to the PGRAF guys. Well, some of the PGRAF guys. But so my group, Well Hung Jury, was helping to renovate the space, even though we were teenagers and we had no experience, with carpentry, obviously. We're from the suburbs. We have no clue. But we made a deal with him where we would work a certain amount of hours in exchange for free rent. So we did... The first year the Hideout was open, we did a weekend of shows every month for free. We kept the whole door. And in that time, we really grew a lot. We were experimenting with different forms. The internet was pretty new. And so I was all over the internet trying to find out what other people were doing and here's an interesting format that people did and we should rehearse that and see if we like it and then talk to them about getting permission to do it in Austin. So we would do that and we would come up with a lot of our own formats and we kind of had a reputation for being experimental and just coming up with new shit all the time. And I think that I still try to hold on to that ethic even though I don't perform enough to, we rehearsed every week. We rehearsed for 3 hours every Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so that was really good for us as young artists. We grew a lot in that time. And that's a really formative time for a lot of artists too. Early 20s. We had tons of energy. We didn't have jobs because we were in college. Some of us had part-time jobs, but there just weren't no families, of course, no distractions. We were all pretty well focused on just doing this thing that we really liked. And so, that's kind of where we grew from. And the scene had so there was Comedy Sports happening and Monk's Night Out, and then Sean opened the Hideout. And then at some point along the way, they stopped doing improv at the Velveeta Room. I think Mark Pruder, who was running Monk's Night Out, tried to open the Bad Dog. Do you guys know about the Bad Dog Theater?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So it's in that spot that's still vacant at Riverside and South Congress for a while. I think it says Bear on the side.
Yeah.
So for a long time it was...
La Bear? Is that the...
Yes, sorry, yes.
Okay, so it used to be the old strip club. It was an old...
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
But no, it was that's the thing it was most recently.
Right.
Before that, it was... They renovated it and spent a bunch of money and turned it into a comedy theater where they were doing stand-up and improv. And that was open for a couple of years, but they just couldn't make it work. So that closed, and then later it was the Steamboat moved from 6th Street, and they were open there for a year, maybe less than a year, and then it was that strip club.
Wow.
And so now it's just sitting there, and it's been there for 15 years.
Yeah, it's still got all the paint on it.
I stare at that so much.
Yeah, and the inside is probably an amazing space to do comedy.
I was excited because I actually thought there was a male strip club in Austin when I got here.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of curiosity, I'd always wondered what that was.
Wendell wanted a job there. It's okay. Don't worry, you're in it.
Okay, I just came into it I know what Chippendales is. I think that's still a thing. What happens in this building? This doesn't look anywhere near. I don't see any bow ties anywhere near this building.
I bet you. So you were in the parking lot watching the workers go in.
Oh yeah,
they're not even wearing bow ties. What is this shit?
Half of them aren't even wearing shirts. What's going on? Yeah, no,
that guy's not wearing pants.
He's got suspenders.
Suspenders and no pants. How does that even work?
What are you holding up?
What are you suspending?
Man, that's just another weird building that could be a great theater.
Yeah. Okay.
Me back. Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that at this exact current moment, there's this weird little crisis going on about theater spaces and people being very concerned. And I wonder between the theater on Congress you're talking about that's in limbo,
sure it's still a
and this
theater
other one,
because it's untouched.
I wonder if there's some sort of rule about. In the Austin Charter about too many art spaces. They're you have enough, people.
I think it's just a question of rent.
I like the idea of calling
rent is going
a
up.
Male strip club an art space too, just because eventually that failed.
Well, but it was an entertainment venue. Regardless of what the entertainment was, people went and paid money. There was probably a bar.
That's a good spot right there.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a great spot.
That's
you'd think. But shit just kept opening and closing.
The beginning of South Congress.
Yeah. I wonder
and they
too
have their own
if
parking. It's the closest thing to downtown with parking.
But you know what else has that? Yeah. Right down a block down across from Hooters. There's that one bar right on the corner.
Zach's.
And no, on the other side.
The other way.
Oh, the one that was upstairs.
That had like 3 levels.
Yeah.
That has been multiple different restaurants and stuff. That has its own parking garage.
Used to be at Bennigan's, yeah.
And you can park in the garage. There's no problem to get in and out. Yet I have seen 5 different bars go through it. They can't maintain the space. I wonder what about this particular area is just pushing people out.
You know, sometimes...
Go ahead.
I just think that some landlords own a ton of land.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't even live here. Like the one who owns the Hideout lives in Houston, and they own like tons of spaces in downtown Austin, and they don't give a shit. Like they don't care if they're getting $3,000 a month for rent. They could not care. So they're not motivated to like really work that deal.
That's true.
I think whoever owns that building that LeBaire was in maybe just doesn't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, what's crazy is I think it was a restaurant a long time ago. And then when they went in and renovated it, the Bad Dog people, they probably made it. I mean, they did make it into an awesome space. I was in there, and it would be a great place for comedy to come back. And the things that have been in there since probably didn't change the renovations much. Yeah. I think they had 2 bars. They had like an area for like a big lobby that had a pool table, but all those, when they closed, those people just scattered to the wind. A lot of them went to LA because they were done with Austin comedy, Austin improv.
Yeah.
So the Hideout opened in 98, I think, or no, the Hideout opened in 99, late 99.
Interesting. And you had achieved this high level of success with the well-hung jury because, like, I've heard about this. That as far as I'm concerned, you're illuminating further back history, which is great, so I can do more research. But more. The first, like, improv troupe that people talk about as being the earliest, and not the Monk's Night Out, though I have heard of that, but the well-hung jury. People are always like, oh, well, that's where all of the people come from. So when people talk about the community now, and you're like, well, where did it start? And they're like, well, well-hung jury at the Hideout, but when the Hideout was something different. And I was like, okay. So then, I'm trying to figure out stuff like that. I recently met Ben Sterling. He mentioned you. I was all like,
works in Georgetown,
okay,
right?
Yeah, we worked together on the same camp.
Yeah,
and it was like, oh, great.
Yeah,
yes,
I went to high school
course.
with him. I was in Romeo and Juliet with him and all this stuff back in the day. Way back.
Yeah, the classics. Good old Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's great to understand how it goes back even further than that. Just because the Austin improv scene is so specific. So back to, you mentioned when we first started talking, when you left the Austin improv scene to go check out Chicago and other places, and you were like not having it in Chicago. Tell me, like, further, what was your experience there? How did you like just do it for a few years and then you were like, forget it, and you went to New York? Tell me that journey.
So, yeah, there was the moment there when I realized this is not the style of improv I like. I think I might have known that going in. But I thought, well, this is a career thing, like all these guys went through I.O., Mike Myers and Chris Farley and such and so on, and Second City. Obviously, plenty of people came out of Second City, so I was like, if I want to do this for a living, I have to go there. But then, when I realized I can't handle this, I just brought a bunch of people with me. So I moved up there in November 2nd, 2003, and I know that because the previous day was my friend's wedding. So I stayed for his wedding and then left the next day. And by the end of the summer 2004, I had 4 guys who were in Well Hung Jury that I started a new group with, and we were going to tour colleges and stuff around the Midwest. So that was Available Cup Holders, which is still a group, and it's still the same people plus one additional person, which we can talk about later. Casey Beeler we added later on. But so the way I got to Available Cup Holders was I was touring a solo improv show around the Midwest, like anywhere I could find a theater. I basically went on the internet. Again, the internet, I'm so grateful to the internet. It's done so many amazing things for me. And, I went and found theaters, and who can I email? And I just made a giant list and I spammed all of them, and I'm like, here's this show. It's called Bigly Huge, parentheses, hugely big. And it's just a solo improv show, and, you know, it's $300. And so
you invented Bigly.
Well...
That's amazing.
I don't know.
Trademark.
I should have. Fuck.
If you ask spam emails from the 90s, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Lots of different colored fonts.
Yeah. No, I tried to just keep it pretty simple. No Comic Sans in my emotional emails.
None of those like glittery backgrounds that we used to put on.
The flags.
Yeah.
That was probably a GIF, those little flags. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I say GIF.
GIF.
Let's not spend the next hour doing this. Because I need...
Huge tangent.
I need everyone to agree with me on that, so let's just...
Okay, it's fine.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So you're going on it, so you put the tour out there.
I did these tours. They were real short, and I made almost no money, but I was meeting people. And I met this guy named Joey Green, who I just recently friended on Facebook, which I'm surprised it took me that long.
The internet never stops just handing you
gifts. Yeah. I owe my marriage to Facebook, too.
Me too.
But that's, yeah.
All right.
But anyway, so I met Joey Green, and he said there's this thing called NACA, N-A-C-A, which is the National Association for Campus Activities. And he said you go to these trade shows, and the students are walking around buying entertainment, and they buy these shows. I was like, okay, cool, so I'm going to look into this. So I did look into it, and I had already known about Mission Improbable, which is a group that tours and does short form. And they had an agent who was booking shows for them, and those guys were very successful and toured a lot. And I thought, well, there's probably room for another group to do that. So we started this group, Available Cup Holders, and we went to these conferences. We couldn't get an agent, so we were representing ourselves, and that just proved to be too difficult. So we did that so essentially I was living in Chicago, but I wasn't doing much of the scene. And Available Cup Holders would perform at like these open mic kind of bar things. There was one at the Globe, which probably they're not doing anymore, and a couple other places that were just backroom bar, you know. But we weren't performing on any of the spaces. Like nobody knew who we were really. But we were touring and we weren't making an okay living. We had other jobs too, but it was super fun. And so we did that, and then we had this 1 week where we did 6 gigs in 7 days. We toured from Chicago down into Ohio and then up through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to this school called Marquette. And so we did 6 gigs in 7 days, and we ended up back in Chicago, and it was just like so amazing and so awesome. But I also realized, you know, if I was doing this, I wouldn't be happy if I was making like a decent, for some reason, 50 grand was like, that was like my goal. And I thought, well, even if we were making 50 grand a year, all of us, I don't think I'd be happy doing this. So then I was like, well, I'll just go back to Austin. So then that's why I left Chicago, is like, you know, I was never really in the scene. Some people knew me. We did shows at like the Playground, you know, so some of those Playground people knew me, but yeah, I think I was in a group. I was in one of their incubator groups, which I guess is the same as the Monk's Night Out audition group, actually. We were called Right Hand Red, or Right Hand Yellow, after Twister. But yeah, that group was around for, you know, 4 months, and we did a few shows, but yeah, so then I went back to Austin and was just really focused on Out of Bounds. I'm having a cramp in my leg. Oh my God, I'm having a cramp in my leg. Wow.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. It happens. I'm just going to drink some water.
I was like, do you want to get up and walk around? You can stamp. It's totally fine.
This is how old I am.
I totally understand.
God.
Yeah,
it's because I played soccer earlier and didn't drink enough water.
Oh boy.
Woo! So anyway.
Sorry about that.
It's gone. I'm good.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Can you stretch me out? Can we do that stretch, Amy, where I'm laying on the ground and you're just like leaning on my leg like you're on the sidelines?
What is that helping? Like when?
I don't know. It could help. Who knows?
I don't know why they need to put so much weight on it. Like get the giant trainer guy over there to sit on your leg. Anyway.
Yeah,
also, I'm gonna be sitting in an ice bath later. I don't. Maybe for connected reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, well, now that you explained that it's a large trainer that does it, I was gonna say I'm happy to. I was like, oh yes, then I'm the right person exactly to be doing this for you.
Neither one of us are CPR trained either. So
no, I'm very CPR trained.
Very CPR?
Yeah,
like extra.
Oh yeah,
I've had to take a couple Well, I had to take it when I was a hotel manager, and then when I was having the baby, they made me take a CPR
I was going to
class.
say, they've definitely added stuff since you were a hotel manager, I think.
No, you're right, but I took it last year right before I had the baby.
Okay.
I don't know why, because when I say this to other mothers, they're like, that's not a thing, but whatever I was in, whatever group I was taking classes with was like, you have to get a CPR training, so I did.
That's weird. We never did that.
I have to assume that the kind of CPR you perform on a baby is different, right?
It is,
you just like pick it up and shake it around until it's...
You don't shake it around like that.
No, you don't just like twirl.
Exactly. Grab it by the arm and swing it around.
Swing it like a lasso?
Just a lot of back smacks. Pretty much, you can solve any problem with a child by just whacking them on the back.
Yeah.
That's all you do. Yeah. That's how it works.
With the
reset.
palm.
It's a reset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the palm thing.
Yeah, no, I had to do it last year because I had to do it last year because I was teaching the camp, the kids camp, and all the teachers had to be CPR trained, but I was already signed up for a class because it was part of this like prenatal stuff that I've been doing, so I don't know, clearly I signed up for the overachievers one, let's be clear, of course I did.
We did a hypnobirthing class. Did you do a...
No.
What did you do?
I mean, as far as a birthing class, I went to, I think it was a church-related one, which is not great, you know.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't generally help you when you're breathing.
Not much,
you know? But no, we took all the classes, and then I had a C-section, so it was like, well, that was useless information. I don't need to know.
That was awesome.
And I was like, well, was there a class on how to get through a surgery? Nope. No, okay.
The other thing is they give you a class for the birth. They don't give you... There's no classes for the first few weeks.
Yeah.
Which are totally... That's so insane. That time period is just so insane.
But the church classes that I took had parenting, but it was very much older parent. Like, it was like, don't forget to make sure your children learn this. And it was like, yeah, when he's a lump in a log, what do I tell him? Like, what am I supposed to be saying to this 2-month-old? Like,
baby Einstein,
Jesus loves you, or whatever. I don't know. Like, I was lucky that he opened his eye. He slept so much that I was just like, is this baby all right? But turns out it was okay.
You don't want to, do not poke the bee's nest on that.
Yeah, it just turns out it was real boring at the house for the first couple
he was like,
it was you. It was just
fucking lame.
Me.
Yeah. You were not performing to standards.
Yeah, now I got the song and dance numbers going all the time. Yeah, it's different.
Perfect.
How you
see his little
feeling?
baby
Right?
thumb come stick it out.
It's still a little tight. It's weird. Yeah.
I was like, I get Charlie horses a lot. If you want to walk around, you're welcome.
Yeah, if you want to like sprint up and down the hall.
Well, even just in the room, I was gonna say, because like I get Charlie horses like as I'm falling asleep sometimes.
Yeah, I get them too.
And I hop up and I just walk and pace in my bedroom. My husband's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I got a cramp! Oh my god!"
Yeah,
like,
no.
Okay.
When I get them, I usually just drink a bunch of water and it goes away. I mean, this one's sticking around.
See, I just lay down and pray for the sweet release of death.
Yeah.
Normally, I can't walk. It's just like a thing where it's like everybody's stopped living around me right now.
You're so funny.
It hasn't happened yet, so maybe change your strategy. Get yourself a gun. Keep it by the...
You're crazy young, man. There's just no way your sweet release of death is happening soon.
Well, if I cramp up, it's because I earned it. I had like a really long weekend where I just did not drink any water, just drank a bunch of beer, did whatever drugs people handed me, and then I'm just like super dried up, and I gotta like do shit on Monday, and then it'll just I can't complain about it because
you're taking your penance.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm 30. That kid's it's like even before then, especially like in my 20s when I was actually doing all that stupid shit, where it's like I can't just be cramping up because that says to somebody I have organ failure or something later on. It's like, why are you cramping up? You're in the prime, the prime of your life, and it's like, because I'm burning through it really fast. So
your liver's soaking up all the resources.
Every time I had
trying
like a
to work
cramp,
so hard.
Yeah, anytime I had a cramp like here, I don't know, I would get like cramps here sometimes.
In the middle of your body?
Abdominus?
Yeah, and like towards the back, and I would just be like, oh, weird.
I'm a little
there it goes.
About you now.
No, I was super concerned. I was like, there it is. There it is. That's the beginning of it. This is the beginning of like this sweet
hospice
like
care.
swan song I need to start right now.
Oh my god.
So you're 30 now.
Yeah, I'm 30 now.
How long have you been 30?
Since February.
So like 10 minutes?
Yeah, really. Like barely. No, I've been...
you just feel like that's been like...
sprinting to 30, you understand? I've been running towards these adult problems, like head on, so...
He's mentally been 30 for a long time.
Yeah.
But.
I don't do anything active enough for me to get cramps, is what I'm saying. So, like, I get cramps by just drinking too much and sitting down a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and then, and then I'm always just sure, because it happens in places nobody talks about cramps, like weird places like that. And I'm just like, well, that's kidney number 1. I got to take care of the second one. Like, the second one seems to be kicking on all cylinders right now, but
You've never woken up in a bathtub filled with ice, right?
It's a good question.
But I went to sleep in that bathtub of ice.
Yeah.
That was so he could have his Cabernet nice and cool between his legs, so he can just reach down. Oh, perfect. I don't know. Is Cabernet a red? That's a red wine, but it's not cold. You don't want to.
You don't really want to.
Yeah. What Pinot Grigio?
Yeah, Pinot. Yeah, some
Pinot you want.
Yeah.
That's now I fixed that joke.
That's what I was doing. During those cramps. Yeah. I was sipping a nice like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. And
not bathtub gin with a twirly straw.
Yeah. Not alcohol you buy in gallon buckets or anything.
Or from the guy that makes it in a still in his garage.
Yeah.
Or downstairs, whatever.
South Carolina.
He just, sure enough. And, it's just, some people are blind. That's what you tell yourself at the end of the day. It's just some people are blind and they get around okay.
So that's why you just lay there and don't do anything.
That's the cheers. It's like, some people are blind and they're all right. And you just knock it back.
Some of them are blind because of the moonshine, though. Let's be
well.
real.
Because that's like what you're accepting. It's the possibility that this is the last time you'll see all your friends.
Literally.
Like you toast and it's like, well, hopeful, and then just knock it back. And you could go blind. You could, I think,
start a band.
You could lose muscular mobility. Yeah, there's lots of downsides to bad moonshine.
You become a leader of a country. It's weird what happens when you're on moonshine.
It seems like it's kind of a crapshoot. You never.
Everybody's just walking around in the woods all like weird anyway. So it's not.
Oh my God, that's your T-shirt, Wendell. Everyone's just walking around in the woods anyway. Dude.
Where did I put my moonshine? Just feeling around.
I mean, sometimes the woods can be metaphorical, and stand for other things like buildings or other people.
I was being super literal.
Or their own mental blockages. Interesting.
Yeah, there you go.
Ooh,
Everyone has their own El Guapo.
Yeah. And then, they drink and they blind themselves to these things.
Yeah. I'm super concerned about your kidneys now with all the discussion.
Well, you see how thick these glasses are, right? I obviously had some near misses along the way.
I was like, I don't know that vision loss and kidney failure are totally deeply connected. I mean, not for everyone anyway.
Well, it would have been really shitty if I just had a cramp and then all of a sudden I was blind a little. Like I did. I had perfect vision and I was just like, what? What?
Oh, that can't be. That has to be a coincidence. That can't be.
That happens, right, guys? That's what a cramp is.
That's what it leads to. It's
3 separate things fail all at the same time. You hear like and all of a sudden, like one foot goes out to the right, and you're just like,
oh no, I have chronic depression too.
And your armpit's leaking somehow. You're like, what's happening?
Oh my God! It smells like moonshine. I am my own still.
That would be great.
Right.
When you die, I will make you into something to drink. Is that something that you'd like to have in your will?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Like the brown goo in the sarcophagus.
Oh, yeah.
People want to drink that.
Tell me about that, because I saw somebody post about that, and I think it's crazy.
I just read that there was a group of people, I think they even started a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe.
Yes, I saw that.
Which is what?
Why you need money to drink it?
I don't know. To get it,
to make them buy it from let us eat it? Is
government?
That, to be like, you guys stand over there.
Look, we raised 10 grand, so that means you have to let us eat this. Eat this mummy goo.
God, so gross.
I don't know, this bone juice.
It's the same thing when they found mammoth. They found almost intact mammoth in the ice, and they were just like, somebody said it tasted weird, and I was just like, who's that guy?
Yeah, right.
Why is he giving his opinions to the reporters?
Who let Mort on the expedition where he could fucking eat a mammoth?
That can't be your first thought. That literally can't be your first thought. It's just, well, fuck.
My husband thinks that it will be the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. He's like, if they drink the goo, they're zombies, and then that's over. And I was I guess.
Chris calls zombie apocalypse a little more frequently than some, though.
You're right.
Yeah, the boy who cried zombie apocalypse.
100%.
Like, yeah.
That's the children's book that describes my husband.
Another T-shirt. Oh my God! Where's the screen printing? Where's the
Swear to God, if La La Land wins the Oscars, it's the beginning of the zombie apocalypse.
Thank God!
He's like already boarding the windows.
I wanted whoever announced it this year to say, and the Oscar goes to Moonlight. Oh wait, no, just kidding. And then whoever it actually was.
So that they actually got a
do that
woohoo.
forever.
Yeah.
We just make fun of Warren Beatty for the next 20 years.
Oh yeah, it was Warren Beatty.
He's a classic person to make fun of, for sure.
Didn't he come back and do it in the next... No, we'd only had one, right? Have we had another one since that? We have. Warren Beatty, I think, got another crack at doing it. Right?
Did he really?
I think so.
Well, when you're real famous, they let you do whatever you want, even if you make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, I know the best actor one year does the best actress the next year.
Oh, there's like the only shuffle.
I think that's the only set tradition.
Yeah.
So like best film or best motion picture.
Yeah.
And best director are not. I don't know how they pick those.
Yeah, it's not like the sound editors announcing for the previous sound editor situation. You're like, who's that guy? Hi, my name's Roger Smith, and I won last year. Now. You loved it.
Yeah. I know you remember me.
Clearly you remember this face. Who's that guy?
The statue is just this burden for next year. This is your curse now.
Yeah, I'm just passing this on.
No matter where you run to, the statue will summon you to the stage.
It's like, you remember all those movies? This is a total, tangent, but it made me think of it when you were handing me the mystical statue. You remember all those movies like...
Monkey Paws?
Where people's personalities would change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there was the
Friday.
one called Vice Versa with Judge Reinhold, and... Oh, no, wait. The one with the weird thing was Kirk Cameron and...
oh, my God.
And Dudley Moore.
Whoa.
I don't even remember the name of it.
I can't
but they were
the
father and son, and he was an archaeologist and picked up something, and they were talking about it, and he was like, Dad, why are you always spending all your time with these weird old things? And he picks it up, and then they switch personalities, and that's how it starts.
Is that, I guess, dramatically speaking, like Hollywood screenplay, that's more advantageous than just Big, where you're a grown man.
Yeah, because that just gets...
I guess
there's just a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But Big was followed by 13 Going on 30, which is the same.
Oh, was it? I don't know that one.
13 Going on 30 is pretty much Big with a girl.
Oh, okay.
She is 13 and she goes into a closet.
That is, and then, that's very.
And then all of a sudden,
on a special dress, and then boom.
And then all of a sudden, when she walks out, she's 30 years old, and she's in a New York apartment.
Everybody's into it. Yeah, like everybody's just like, whoa,
it's 30
zany
years
30-year-old.
later.
Look at her having fun.
Yeah, I mean, so, but instead in Big, the year stays the same and the kid gets older. In 13 Going on 30, the girl essentially ages. The world exists as if she's been there the whole time, but she only realizes.
Yeah, and then she learns about the life she
exactly. She just misses out on adolescence.
She misses out on all the good stuff.
Exactly.
13
College, high school and college. This is the best time.
A solid amount of time that you're going to enjoy.
Yeah, that might be.
Did she have a job already?
She's like an executive. And
she's
like hardcore. Nobody likes her. She's real mean and everything.
But she shows up as this 13-year-old, and she's all like, "Why isn't anyone my friend?" And it gets real weird.
I'm definitely not going to watch this.
It's a different. If you are either your children daughters?
Yeah,
because you're probably gonna watch it.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah.
No. Yeah. My
it's
girlfriend.
Jennifer Garner. She's adorable. You've got to show it to her. I mean, though I saw somebody tweet the other day. I think it was Catherine Hutchins about how that movie is like, at the end of this movie, we are upset because this 30-year-old man doesn't want to date a girl whose mental age is 13.
Yeah.
Like, why are we upset about this? It's probably right that he shouldn't want to date someone so immature. Like,
Mark Ruffalo?
You're right. Yeah,
Mark Ruffalo. Wow. Yeah. He's great.
Yeah, but it was just I was like, oh, that's an excellent point. Of course, she shouldn't want to date her.
Well, that happened in Big too, right? Because he falls for the older lady.
They actually do hook up, I think.
Yeah, which I think is probably why they changed the end of 13 Going on 30.
Yeah.
It's like creepy.
And then he goes back to being a kid at the end, right?
And then she's got to deal with that. I think, mentally.
Now she has to. I'm in love with you, and now you're 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have a mental breakdown if I were that woman, and I'd be like, "What? Oh God!"
Well, it's interesting. Like never mind. I'm not going there.
Nope.
Nah, yeah. See, that's
it's terrible.
Really,
yeah. But these are things that happened in the 80s, early 90s, and these, like, the topics of this would never. Like, I think about movies that I watched when I was growing up, and I'm like, there would never be this movie now because it's like super weird. Like, for instance, just to bring it back to the middle school kids, we were working on because I have them write. When I do the camps, they write their own show. Cool. So I teach them how to write comedy, and then they write their own show. And one kid came to me.
A
sketch show.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Sweet.
So it is different than improv.
And half of them are actually 40 magically somehow.
No, some of them are though. I mean, you talk to people. The one thing I've learned working with kids is that like some people are just sort of mature themselves, no matter what age they are.
Yeah.
And some people,
precocious,
will age or whatever, and when they get older, they'll change. But there were a few of them where it was like I could just talk to them like a and it wasn't a thing.
Best. Yeah.
And one of the people asked me, since there's a lot of hot button stuff that comes up, if they don't bring it up, I'll try to bring it up so I can have them discuss it with me without it being me, weird older lady, trying to be like, okay, guys, what do you guys think about politics? Like, that's not great. So one kid came to me and he said, well, could we do a scene where we like switch genders, where the guys play the girls and the girls play the guys? And I said, sure, but is that the joke of the scene? And he's like, yeah, it would be. And I go, okay, well, let's come up with something that doesn't seem offensive that could be that joke. And we brainstormed a bunch of things, and they were all terrible because the way that because they know and I know that, right now you can't just say this gender does this and that's it. And so we would throw ideas out and they'd be like, but no, guys do that too. I'm like, okay, well, what about this thing? And then after we discussed it for 5 or 10 minutes, the guy kind of let it go because I was like, I don't know that we'd be able to do this without actually just doing stereotypes. Yeah. Is that the joke you want to do? Are we making fun of stereotypes or what? And he was like, no, I guess not. And I was like, listen, I appreciate what you're saying, that's something that you're, you'd be interested in trying this stuff. I mean, yeah, Kids in the Hall does that kind of stuff. Sure. Monty Python did that kind of stuff. But since we're writing it and I want it to make sense in a way that like what you're doing on stage reflects the joke, I don't know that we'd really be able to do it. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, you're right. Okay. And it was like, so even the ideas that I think are not going to work, I'll just talk through it with them to be like, so that I don't just say, no, that's not going to work. And then I'm just like the jerk teacher who instead of trying to help you get to something just tells you what I think.
Oh, right.
Instead,
Norm Hawley was his name.
Instead of that fella, I like to talk it through so that they then come to the conclusion of, oh, yeah, we can't do that. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. Let's try something else then. And I said, we'll figure out a way to maybe work this out. Who knows? And so the guy was kind of hopeful that things would work out, but we just never found a joke to fit it that wasn't weird or offensive in some way. Sexist. So it was like, okay.
Yeah. It's like you can throw it at him as dated, It's like literally the very first time a guy, went out on stage as drag and that was the joke, then we had to move on. We had to start, like one guy was like, look at me, I'm in a dress, isn't that silly? And everybody was like, yes, that's very silly. And then like threw roses at him. And then we had to, you got to move forward with that. Like, you have to, like the idea can't just be,
I had to have the same conversation with the high school kids, but I had to explain it differently because they looked at it differently. Yeah. You know what I mean? And also they're older, so they like kind of get politics, which means they think it's a bunch of BS. Like my favorite is when I bring up something and they're like, ugh, God, all you adults keep talking about this stuff. It's not a big deal, right? And I was like, cool, I'm glad it's not a big deal to you guys. I was like, if it won't be a big deal when you're older, great. I look forward to being an old person in your world. I'll take it. Yeah. But I mean, if nothing else, I've been filled with a lot of hope with the middle school and high school kids, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're not going to deal with any of this.
They're also so progressive with LGBTQ issues and stuff. They just don't care. Yeah. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah, but and not in a way that feels forced. Like just I literally don't understand why this could be weird.
I see the world and this is what the world is just everybody's cool. Like it's just like a perspective thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. And I think the only way that gets The only way that changes in the kids is with their parents or whatever kind of influences they have that try to train that out of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, because like a baby's not born knowing anything about race. Yeah. You know, it's the society and their parents and whoever that just sort of teaches them, well, this thing is this other thing, and then it's a bummer.
Yeah.
But I think that kids they don't care about that stuff,
especially the artistic ones. Like normally, like those are definitely going to be
the most empathetic.
Yeah, because they feel so much.
Yeah, that's a super interesting thing that even I've thought about with like adult performers, and like when people get really overly sensitive or really dramatic or very depressed about stuff, I try to assuage their fears by saying you naturally have a wider ability to receive this sort of emotion, because they're like, why don't my other friends feel this way? And I'm like, listen, you naturally are artistic, which means your empathy receptors are wide open.
It's
other
totally
people's
genetic.
Are just blocked, and they don't care because they just don't have the ability to,
and they become conservatives.
I mean, or they go one way and they think everything's black and white, and you're like, there's so much gray. What are you talking about? But the empathy is what lets you see the gray. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, and so when I meet these kids and I'm like, or even 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds who are like, oh God, why do I feel so deeply? I'm like, okay, I know right now it sucks to feel deeply.
Sit down here.
But you're gonna be happier in the long run that you can feel this than the people who don't. Like, I spend all my time with theater people at this point, whether it's middle school, high school, or adults, but the rest of the world seems like a weird anomaly to me. I was like, what are you guys doing? I don't get the brain in your head. Like, what is it that you think? Like,
the other thing that's cool, it turns into a superpower, because you can take theater or improv or sketch comedy or whatever, and you can really change people's minds. You know, and I think that's how we socially evolve, is by looking at each other. And so what better way to look at what people are doing than by sitting in a dark space and watching the people in the light, you know, work through whatever problems and come up with solutions in an imaginary space. So those kids that are having trouble and feeling a lot, you can just, I say to them, look, you're developing a superpower right now, and someday you're going to be able to really change people's minds and bend them to your will.
I was gonna say, like, humor is like the best way to trick somebody into learning something.
Totally. You
know, or like growing, or like at least thinking about a thing. They're like, oh yeah, I thought about that once. I didn't think much of it, but that guy's having fun. You know, like that kind of thing.
And there's different types of like stand-up comedians, of course, and ones that I always liked the most were the what they call them, social commentators.
Yeah, like
George Carlin, and Lenny Bruce, and those guys that were like, here's a bunch of funny shit. Like, trust me, I'm funny. Okay, now we're going to talk about this thing that I want to talk about that's important.
Why do we all do this all the time? That kind of shit.
And then back to the funny. It's like the Nanette. Have you guys watched that?
Oh, yeah.
So amazing, and just like, she comes out and proves to you that she's funny and she can do it, and she gains your trust with the comedy, and then just totally devastates you with everything else, and then back to the comedy a little bit, and then just here's a mirror, you know, like
and you know it's effective too, because like I see like the reactions to it on Facebook, I see from like people outside of the comedy community and inside of it, where it's like they're treating it like an indictment just on stand-up in itself, or like their reactions to it are just like, well, I don't know, none of that's right, because they feel like comedy is being attacked or something. And, and it's like where are you going with that? Like, I don't know.
I think that it's personal for her. It's like the industry side of it that sort of backed her into a corner. It's sort of, she was also getting famous at the same time, and so I think it's more personal than industry wide.
I didn't feel a need to stop. Like, I wouldn't feel bad about being funny after watching that special, you know? Like,
people are so weird when it comes to taking things personally. I'm like, it's not all about you.
Totally.
Like, other people can have their whole lives that don't affect you. Like, even this woman, right? So we watched this thing, Nanette, on Netflix. Thank goodness Netflix brings it to us, because I'd never heard of her before.
Of course,
Yet I'm watching her speak
She's
in a
super
room
famous
with millions of
huge
people in that room.
auditorium.
I mean,
the the place in Australia to perform.
Huge, yeah. I was like, she is clearly hugely famous.
Very accomplished.
Yet, I had never heard of her, and I get to see her for the first time showing me, her underbelly, her soft underbelly of like, oh my God, this whole journey that she shared. And I appreciated, like you said, she proved she was funny up top. But to me, it was like, she told me who she was. And then she said, now that we're pals, let me tell you about some tough times I've gone through.
Yeah,
and it was like, I'm so, thank you. I want to be in on this journey with you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And just the whole idea of like, here I am at the pinnacle of my career, but I have to quit because this is just too insane.
Yeah.
And I wonder if she actually is going to quit.
Yeah.
I don't know that
she
she'll...
said it a couple times.
I don't know that she'll quit comedy at large, but I think she's going to quit doing what she was doing initially, which was just making fun of herself.
Yeah. Except that she
now
did
potentially...
She kind of kept doing it.
I noticed she did that whole section about I'm not going to do self-deprecating humor anymore.
And then she did.
And then later she was, and I was kind of like, okay... What are you saying here?
Well, but there's I'm of two minds about that, which is to say, in the way that she has to, quote, prove that she's funny.
Right.
The people who came and bought the tickets are used to
see the
X-comedy.
stuff.
So she gives them a little bit of what they like, and then they take the ride with her on the other stuff.
Yeah.
So she's like, listen, I'll give you this, but you got to listen to me for this half, right?
Yeah.
Also, I feel like the idea of separating yourself from self-deprecating comedy is hard, especially if, like, your entire...
You've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, your whole sense of humor is built off of this, and it's your little shell that you live in. Like,
well, she also said, "I have no other skills. I can't take any other job.
Right,
but I'm fucked."
That's why I think the beauty of it is she could just drop the comedy part and just tell really heartfelt stories across the world from now on.
She should do the Australian moth.
Yeah, or like just travel the world to tell people like it's okay to be who you are, because I am not any of the things that I don't deal with any of the problems that she deals with.
You're not from Tasmania?
I was so connected.
You're not a lesbian from Tasmania?
I am not a lesbian from Tasmania. I have none of that thing,
Yeah.
But I was so like, I'm in on your journey. I support you. I love it.
You still connect.
Yeah, but I have that wide open empathy thing. My whole life is just soaking in other people's fears and happiness and sadness, and that's okay. I like it all. But yeah, she's great. That was cool. And I like you're saying, Wendell, how much it's affected the world. How much people are either for it or against it or have something to say about it. I'm like, that means it affected you. That means she was succeeded. No matter what your reaction is, happy, sad, angry,
that's her superpower.
She succeeded.
Yeah.
She got you to talk about it.
Yeah, like walking away from it, none of it felt like it. That all felt like it was her thing, and I was happy for her at the end, for her to like kind of shed this weight that she had been talking about. But it was like there are a lot of people that are like, but how does this affect me and what I do? And it's like, are you shitting me? Really? She's in Australia. Even just in a literal physical distance sense, you're good. Just keep doing your tight 5 or your tight 10 or whatever. Just let it go.
You realize that Australian show business is different than American show business, right?
Yeah, she's basically just like, it's like if Rodney Dangerfield just all of a sudden was like, everybody high fives me, and I don't know, they let me take lefts and
it's
stuff.
Weird.
Just switch. It's
Did you ever see Clark and Daw? Mm-hmm. Clark and Daw, I think it's Daw, D-A-W-E. They had they're Australian, and one of them died recently, but they had a weekly bit. They had what's his name? The guy on 60 Minutes that would do the
Maurice.
I don't like. Whenever I get mail, I get all this junk mail. Andy Rooney. So they had. I had to do the impression to get to the. That's how I get there in my brain is by doing the impression.
So good.
But they were they had 6 minutes at the end of whatever the equivalent is in Australia, and they would always do these amazing. It was like a 2-person like Charlie Rose kind of interview, and one of them was always playing somebody in Australian politics, and the other one was always playing the interviewer, and they had this amazing back and forth. I think most of it was written, but some of it was improvised. But But it was just incredible. Like, he never impersonated anyone. He was always just, yeah, here I am. I'm the same guy. And my name's Malcolm Turnbull, which is apparently some Australian politician. And then the exchange is so hilarious. And the one that brought me to it was somebody posted a really old one from like the 90s, because they've been doing this every week forever. Wow. And it was the guy even had like hair, and in the more recent ones he's totally bald. But it was about a ship that was off Australia where the front of it just like broke off and fell into the water. And so the whole joke of the thing is the front fell off. And that's so they just like repeat that like 5 times. Anyway, so everyone should look that up. And then so I did that, and it turns out on YouTube there's hundreds of their back and forth little 5-minute exchanges. And some of them are just so insanely funny. There's one about a preventer. It's like a special device that prevents things. But it's totally made up, obviously. Anyway,
it's interesting how duos like that are, become really like they're totally tight.
Yeah.
And they do all their work connected together, and it's like that's their whole thing. I've never truly had I work on a lot of different projects, a lot of different people, but I've never totally connected in that deep forever kind of way.
I feel that with available cup holders.
Yeah, tell me more about that. You sort of started where you were like, I'll talk about that later. So hey, it's later.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about available cup holders and that group.
So those were people from Well Hung Jury, who were finishing college and didn't have a job, or wanted to move to Chicago and try to tour and do shows and stuff. So that's Michael Joplin, Ace Manning, Bill Stern, and John Benner, who ended up, he's not doing improv anymore. He's off in California growing weed. So it's those 3 guys and me, plus this John Benner guy. And we toured for a while. And then eventually we added Casey Beeler to the mix. I don't know what year that was.
After you came back to Austin?
It was just before. It was in 2005. We did a show with Girls, Girls, Girls that was a battle of the sexes.
Sure.
Kind of like a theater sports kind of show. And that was really fun. But so we did that once, and then we did it a second time. And everyone in Available Cup Holders had decided that we wanted to add Casey Beeler to the troupe. And so we revealed her in the middle of this Battle of the Sexes show, because we were an all-male troupe and girls were all girls. And then we had this girl, and it sort of, threw off the dynamic of the show, which was really fun. But yeah, so she's in the group. And when I came back to Austin in 2006, we were doing shows occasionally, and some of those guys went back to Chicago to keep doing stuff there. Bill is still there, and he coaches at I.O. and teaches classes, I think. Maybe not. But he coaches tons of groups, and he's been on a Herald team for like 9 years. And he auditioned for SNL a couple of years ago, which was totally awesome to hear the story of that audition.
Yeah, it must be a weird one.
Yeah, it was cool. He's got like a 20-minute thing about that. But we still do shows. The only way we really do shows now is for Out of Bounds. Everyone's in town, so we do a show for Out of Bounds. And there's a festival in Sarasota that they did the first one in 2009, and they just called me up. And actually, it was so weird because I got an email from somebody at this theater in Sarasota that said, here's your contract, blah, 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 and everything. And I was like, okay, no one ever called me to talk about booking us, but I couldn't turn the deal down. It was a car for the weekend, housing, and like $1,000 to do a show and a workshop.
Take it.
And I was like, okay, yeah. So I signed this contract, and then I was like, okay, yeah, I just sort of pretended like I knew what was going on. So we went down there and did the show, and that was 10 festivals ago, and we've been every year since. And we just did it's always in July, the weekend after 4th of July. So we just went back and did the 10th anniversary festival there.
Ah, yeah, I saw Casey posting about it. Yeah. So when you mentioned, I was like, oh, right. Okay.
So
you're at the first one.
And they love us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out what the story was?
No. I mean, why would I ask?
No, I mean, I wouldn't either. 100%. But I just wondered if somebody was like, oh, hey, listen, this is what happened.
Way,
I
ended up working there as an artist in residence for 4 months in 2011, like doing improv stuff with them, because that was when I was between New York and Austin, my last move.
How long did you live in New York for?
2.5 years.
Right on. Before
so I was in Austin
you
for
got
a while.
Married?
Then I went to LA, and so I was there. Yeah, doing a little bit of improv, but working full-time as a blogger for G4 TV.
Oh,
nice.
So I did that for like 1.5 years, and some editing, some like video editing. And then, so what took me to New York was I broke up with a girl I was living with in LA, and I changed my status on Facebook, and my current wife saw that, and she had just broken up with a long-term relationship, and so she sent me a message, and we just sort of flirted a little bit. And then I ended up moving there a few months later, moving to New York.
Where your current wife was living?
Yeah.
Ah.
So she was in a super small little studio apartment. And I had been to visit one time before, and she had come to LA for a while, for like a week to visit. And we just decided, let's move in. And if it doesn't work, then I'll just go to Austin, because I felt done with Los Angeles. And so I went to New York, and my whole family's filled with teachers. And so I knew it was my eventual career path. And so once I moved to New York, I had this realization of I was in LA for a long time. I never got headshots. I never tried to get an agent. I went to like 2 auditions. I took level 1 at UCB, and I didn't really enjoy it all that much. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm done chasing this, and I'm just going to like see if this girl wants to, get into a long-term relationship, and I'm going to start this teaching. She was a teacher already, so I ended up getting a part-time gig at her school.
At a New York City school?
Yeah, Trinity.
That must have been crazy.
Trinity School, which is often ranked as the #1 school in the country.
Oh, so fancy.
It's super fancy, K through 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only reason she got to go there is her mom was the ceramics teacher, and has been for like 35 years.
Oh.
Wow.
So they had free tuition, her and her sisters.
Great.
So they went to this amazing private school, their whole K through 12. So anyway, what were we talking about?
You moved in with her, and
they just
how was New York?
teaching?
You started teaching at Trinity?
Yeah, I wasn't teaching. I was doing like lights and sound for plays. For musicals and plays.
Cool.
And I was working at the Public Theater, which puts on Shakespeare in the Park. I was like driving, stuff around the city and out to New Jersey, and because they do a lot of rentals with these places in New Jersey. And so I was driving this big truck, like going and picking up lighting and taking it to different places around the city.
Well, that's so funny. I've also had a job where I had to drive a box truck through New York City to bring lumber from New York to Western Massachusetts. And I was like, guys, there's a lot of trees out here. We could probably just chop a few down and we'd be done.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, you want me to go to Dyke's Lumber in the middle of Manhattan?
Yes.
Cool.
And I'd been there to pick up like molding and stuff.
Oh, it's classic.
For scenery. Yeah.
I believe Dyke's Lumber is where everyone gets their sets in New York and the area. But
lots of balsam wood there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so funny, though. Just driving a box truck through New York City is terrible.
Yeah.
It's the worst. It
takes forever. It's kind of like you have to just know it's going to take forever, and that people are going to cut you off, and that you're going to make no lights at all, and then it's fine. If you
But it's also like, it's kind of like my life. So I've been a fat person my whole life. It's my word. I can use it. And what that means is when there are tiny spaces to go through, I just have to acknowledge that both sides of my body are going to squish against something, either a person or a wall or something. And that's how I felt about driving a box truck.
Running into every car.
Just like, oh God, this is so... Well, because it's huge and it's so small.
But you're making it sound like you just didn't give a shit.
Oh, I just scraped everyone. I'm just knocking people off their bikes and I had another intern that would just stand on the side and go, "Get out of the way!" You're like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's also not really how you operate, like, your body either. You're not really just, like, slamming into people all the time.
I am screaming, get out of the way as I'm walking through crowds at all times. Be careful, at your own peril. You might think this is squishy, but this is terrible.
I have to run. I have a cramp. Get out of my way! Or risk getting knocked over.
I have a very bouncy hip. You'll fly. Oh God, yeah. It's just when you say so when you're in New York, you did a lot of production stuff more than acting. And was that another reason why you were like, no, I'm not going to do this acting?
I just kind of decided I'm tired of like chasing $40 gigs and teaching 2 hours a week and like just making no money.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I'm just going to get a real job and benefits and all that, and it's led to a really nice little teaching career.
Yeah, benefits sound nice. I didn't know they gave that to teachers.
Yeah, well,
that's great.
I'm at a private school.
Oh, you're fancy, good.
Yeah. Well,
so you and your wife then came back.
Too.
Well, it was like my mom was a public school teacher in Boston, and they used to, but now she
in Texas they
is woe-betide a lot of the people that she knows who are younger, who are teachers.
Yeah.
She's always trying to help them and take care of them. Poor kid.
Here, I made a quiche, and well, I kind of really need a knee replacement, but I guess I'll take a quiche. Thanks, Miss Pacheco.
Yeah, right? That's exactly how she solved it. If my mother knew how to make a quiche, it would be hilarious.
Sorry, casserole.
No, my mom is the opposite of a person who cooks and does stuff. She's out at events. People ask me why I'm not political now. It's because she's super political, and as a kid, I carried picket signs and went to rallies at all times. So I was like, I did my time. I'm good.
Done.
Thanks, though. She doesn't know how to cook. That's not a thing. I never learned how to cook. My husband to this day is like, why? What's going on? I watch cooking shows to figure out how to do stuff.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Thank God my dad cooked a little, or else we would just have eaten just takeout at all times. That was my whole life.
Nuggets.
Yeah.
So many nuggets.
From so many different places.
I've had this thought since actually when I was working on the Hideout, there was a Wendy's next door. Now it's a giant hotel, but it used to be a Wendy's. And so I would go and get nuggets and everything. And I had this joke. I did a no shame piece, which was like an open mic thing, which was which have I had more of, chicken nuggets or orgasms? And so the piece was just doing the math of like, okay, weekly I have X number of orgasms on average. Because it doesn't, Wendell, it doesn't really change week to week.
Yeah, no.
It's pretty consistent.
No, yeah, you gotta, your schedule, unless you're like all over the place, it's gonna be, and I'm so glad you brought me into this. I'm so glad.
Sorry.
I know, I'm an expert on this.
I'll represent the nugget side here. No, I understand. I have a lot of nuggets.
For numbers.
I'm made of mostly nuggets.
I will say,
nuggets all the way down.
When I recently moved into an apartment by myself, I have like a studio, and the numbers spiked a little when you got that much privacy.
Sure.
But you do find you do find a mean, you do just kind of, you get tired.
Then you get cramped.
And then you get cramped. But you know what that cramp's about, and that's, that's...
If you're getting kidney cramps after masturbation, call me and I'll call a doctor.
I'm ejaculating
terrible. You just like break, your body's falling out the back.
That's
like, what's going on?
That's
not right.
I think I
How
need
does that body work?
Yeah,
so you're on stage talking nuggets versus orgasm.
Yeah, no, it's,
Specifically Wendy's nuggets, too.
No, not just Wendy's. I was including
just
McDonald's and nuggets in general.
Gotcha.
Those are really the two main places you get nuggets in.
That is true.
These days, there's a lot of chicken places, but they're all fancy chicken.
Tenders.
Yeah, I was going to say they're tenders
strips,
now. Yeah.
Fingers.
Like they're hand breaded.
Your face.
Yeah. Just the idea that we allowed chicken fingers to be a thing, to like enter the lexicon. Because you don't have pig fingers.
We taught children that.
You don't.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's disgusting.
Chicken fingers.
Chickens don't have fingers.
They really don't.
If they could, they would open those cages and run away. Or they'd start slaughtering cows. Making their own hamburgers.
They
start fighting back.
They have like talons. They could fight back, but they just are kind of like,
all right, well, chicken toes.
I think they've been bred to just become nuggets. Most of them. There might be breeds of chicken that are just like, they're just nugget breed. Yeah. Terrier nuggets.
Just a sack.
I have two chickens in my backyard, and they are just dying to become nuggets. They're just going to be nuggets at some point in their life. Yeah. And the more they piss me off, every time they piss me enough and my husband's out of town, I'm like, you would be delicious.
Do they have names? Because Nugget and Finger would be a pretty good...
I'm going to have an orgasm and a nugget right now.
No, they have regular pet names, Checkers and Don. It's very regular.
It's pretty good.
One's a pet name and then one's just a regular name.
A person name. Well,
name.
Yeah, well, I named it after Don McLean because it was an Americana chicken, so I thought American Pie, which I thought Don McLean. And then my husband thought he was mansplained to me that chickens were ladies, or this chicken was a lady. Yeah. And I was like, I don't care. And he was like, well, you named her Dawn. I go, then imagine the spelling is D-A-W-N.
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares?
Yeah.
I go, it's a chicken in our backyard. I could call it that thing, and that's its name. Like,
I don't know. It's having an identity crisis out there. It doesn't. It's like putting on.
It's like,
heels.
who came first? Me or Jeremy? The nugget or the man?
The nugget or the man? I was once a nugget in my father's eye.
There's one chicken out there that understands that gender is fluid. It's doing nothing with that information right now.
Gender is a spectrum.
Nothing. Except it's a hen who every morning just cacaws, and everyone's like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to wake everyone up. Someone else does that.
I wonder if there's a lady touring doing American Pie under Dawn McLean, like D-A-W-N. You could totally do that. Make a career of that.
Because that song is so timely and needs to continue to be out there in the world.
Yeah.
Everybody loves a good 14-minute dirge about sadness.
The thing about that
war.
song and all good songs is there's a section at the end where everyone sings it.
Sure.
You know? Like, We Don't Need Another Hero.
Yeah, Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, those are the songs that stick around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ones where everyone can say ba ba ba.
Yeah, it's just Don McLean complaining about like modern rock and roll, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
No, it's about their death. It's about the death of the Big Bopper and Richie Valens.
It's like
they're like digs at like
fun.
Mick Jagger and shit in there too. But I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was it?
Was it not?
I mean,
or was it Bob Dylan? Is that Moss grows fat on a Rolling Stone
Takes a dig on
thing?
somebody.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's also just a phrase.
That's like square. I know, but like, there's a couple
Moss
of there's something about a King's Jester.
Moss grows fat on a Rolling Stone.
Yeah. And then there's something about a Jester. Like, I feel like he's making fun of like the prancy rockers.
The Jester sang for the King and Queen in a coat they borrowed from James Dean.
Yeah,
a voice.
What year was that?
That came from
look it up.
You and me.
But yeah, I know like
81, something like that.
Because like that. The Big Bopper and like Buddy Holly, they went down in one plane, right? That was one plane accident.
Yep.
Never get on a private plane. Oh yeah, you tell me.
It was Richie
it,
Valens. Yeah.
I was like, La Boma's a classic.
But like, also
I cried so hard in that movie.
Actually,
like, that one in Top Gun.
Blue Diamond Phillips.
Yeah, LDP.
He's so great.
I cared about a lot of people on that plane though, because didn't like a Van Zant go down? Then like
not on that plane. It was
that was a second
pilot. I think.
It was just Buddy Holly, Richie Valens.
Well, John Denver was the pilot.
No.
Shut up.
He killed everyone and then came out with songs that they...
I know, he's just like running away from the crash with all these like songs tucked under his arm.
Holding these notebooks.
Yeah, he's carrying Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I'm so sad! Like...
Yeah, he's carrying every artist who died in an air accident.
Oh my god. Yeah, never get into a private plane, I'll tell you what.
Especially
that
in
explains
shitty
that Spanish
snowstorm.
album. Yeah.
Ever. Really.
In the movie, I don't know if it's true, but in the movie, the bus broke down and didn't have heating. So they're like, look, we're chartering Buddy Holly was like, I'm chartering a plane because I'm rich. Do you want to come with me to the next gig?
If you make any decisions that start with because I'm rich, I feel like that's terrible.
Yeah.
You're just going to fail.
It's like starting I'm not racist, but.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I'm rich, ... is the new I'm not racist, but.
Also, we haven't had planes for even 100 years yet. This is probably going to work out.
This technology is totally sorted out.
We haven't hit the century mark on this tech yet.
Yeah.
you can, like, they encourage smoking in all planes still, so let's take it off, you know?
Yeah. I think that about improv sometimes, that it's only really been around for such a short time. It's like, I feel like it's the new American art form, like the newest American art form.
Yeah, and even talking to you, thanks for bringing it back. You're talking to you. I'm going to assume that we're similar in age, and the fact that like essentially what is the modern history of improv in this city where we live, where it's so booming right now, is just from you in high school to now. That's not that long.
It's not that long in the grand scheme of art.
Yeah, and even in the grand scheme of like improv, like from even the committee and before that, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which even the idea that some of those people are still alive. Like it's like Alan Alda can speak to me about like one of the first improv troupes. That's crazy. Yeah. But it's so entrenched in what it is now. Tell me from and now that you're free to say any of the mean stuff. What do you think about the Austin improv scene as it is now, or what it's developed into in a larger sense?
It's amazing. I think what's great about Austin Improv is it represents so many different types. You'll go to another city and there might be a theater that's really successful, but it's just that one theater, and with one theater you get essentially one philosophy. Mm-hmm. But in Austin, we pretty much got the bases covered as far as what's going on in other places. And then Austin has kind of developed its own identity and style in that crowded space of big places where improv happens. Like if you go to an improv show in New York, you're almost for sure going to see a certain type of improv. Yeah. LA I think is a little more diverse because there is an LA theater sports troupe. Yeah. And there is used to be of course IO West just closed, but there's offshoots. The Pack in the Valleys is doing like just a kind of like a more intense version of the IO philosophy. And then so there's other places that are pretty well set in what the style of that place is. But I think Austin it's using a lot of those ideas, but it's also developing its own identity really well. And part of that is thanks to the internet. Yeah. And there are groups that have a similar ethic to Well Hung Jury of just like, we're going to keep trying new, different shit because we're bored. And like you said, with the first guy who came out in a dress, we got to evolve this. Yeah. We can't keep doing sit, stand, kneel. Yeah. Like who the fuck wants to keep doing that for years and years? If you can really find new stuff in that every single time, then you are a kind of genius that needs to be working probably on math. We changed it to sit, stand, lie down. Whoa, a little variation. Oh, who loves it when the audience can't see them? I do. That was another middle school kid. They were like, can I just lay down on the ground in this scene? And I was like, cool. Here's the thing. I need people to see your face. Yeah. So, is it on that stage at the Palace when you do your little showcase? Not at the big theater is called the Springer Stage, and that's a big old one. They have one across the street called the Playhouse, is where they put me in doing all the comedy. Sweet. So it's got audience on three sides. Nice. So I'm teaching them how to act in a thrust stage, which is a wild thing. Difficult and weird to them, because it's not a movie. And their stage, and the stage is the ground floor, and the audience is up above them. That's the way my space is at work. So it's hard to, get them to act a certain way, and then also to realize the way sound travels and the way that they need to project, and just different things about it. My theater in college was a thrust, so I was like, okay, guys, I got this. This is all right. I was like, but you can't lay down on the ground. Your voice goes to their feet. They don't hear you. It's just not good. No bueno. Yeah, but no, I mean, it's funny how the styles of comedy need to evolve and find their own ways. Since you're teaching theater and you've had a great experience in your life with it, do you find that what you're teaching them evolves, or what they teach you, I guess, could? Yeah, totally. It completely changes over time. And I always thought, well, I feel like I'm really good at improv, and I've been doing this a long time, and I basically have nothing to show for it. Like people my age who are in a band, like if Well Hung Jury were a band and Available Cup Holders were a band, we'd have like albums to show for it, but you don't really have an end product to hold. at the end of an improv show. So that was depressing for a while. And then when I became a teacher and I was teaching theater, I thought, well, I'm using all of that stuff all the time. Even people who teach math are still improvising constantly. Just as far as like classroom management, you got to work with the kids sometimes and meet them where they are. And you've got to, sometimes you have to yes and how they're getting their comprehension.
Yeah.
So practically, I use a lot of improv in my class, but also, metaphorically, there's a lot of it in there that's just part of how I run the class. But I think if you ask how it's changed, I'm always having to. Here's a good example. So basically what I teach is a 12-week class. So at my school, we're on 3 terms a year, which adds up to about 12 weeks that I get a bunch of kids. And then they all go away and I get new ones. So I have a 12-week thing that's like, here's what I think is good about theater. And I do one day that's all just watching videos of miming performances from YouTube, or like things that I think are useful to watch. So we watch a Marcel Marceau clip, this one weird illusion that this guy does with a mask, where he's holding the mask. It's this French thing. And then a Mr. Bean clip, and then a Rowan Atkinson clip that's not Mr. Bean, which is the Invisible Drum Kit. Have you seen that one? So I show those 4 videos, and all white dudes, which I had not realized until I had a biracial girl in my class who brought that up in the class. And I was sort of like, I was like stammering and yammering. And so I haven't had to teach that 12 weeks again, but I'm going to totally redo that. I'm going to try to figure out how to diversify that and make it more representative. Because YouTube is vast, and I'm sure I can find female mimes.
Or biracial mimes, or people from every country. I mean, I bet you art in every single corner of the world is interesting, and absolutely, but mime is so essential.
And there's no language barrier. So it's there's gotta be something else I can find. So
exciting.
So I'm changing that.
That's great.
That's interesting.
Based on that kid.
I really appreciate that girl stood up for herself.
Me too,
that was kind of like, hey, no one is representing me, and I wish I was being represented.
She's an awesome kid. I love her. And I was sort of like,
great.
So she brought up the Oscars, which had just happened, and I was like, well, there's this thing, there's an Oscars so white hashtag, and I was basically like, we're trying, we're really trying to, but I don't know. I mean, what is we? What does that mean? We're trying. So I'm like, well, I have to actually try. But I was completely unaware that I had just featured these 3 white dudes in that class.
How interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm so glad you said stuff, and that you're open enough to even take it in, as opposed to being all like, shut up, kid, I'm the teacher.
And my wife teaches, my partner teaches English in the upper school, and they're talking in their meetings about how they can diversify the offerings, because almost all the classic literature that we studied from school is old white dudes. A lot of them English. So they're trying to figure out ways to diversify that and change it up too. So I think it's education wide. You can't really diversify calculus, but I think certainly in history it needs to be addressed. Especially with the current climate.
Also, who knows? Maybe in other countries that we're not thinking, like maybe in Africa, they figured out how to do math in a different way, and we're like, dude, you guys figured it out, and we can learn it in this other way. Because I mean, you think of all those. I went to a college where it was like super Greek philosophy focused, and it'd be like, these guys know everything, and you're like, but I don't understand how this one country for a short period of time somehow I knew everything, and that's all that we learned. Like, no.
They murdered all the other people knowing stuff. That's pretty. They went and murdered all the other knowers. They found people knowing stuff, and they're like,
no, we have to conquer you.
I mean, I read those books too. I read the Iliad and Thucydides. I know they murdered everybody, but
we get the only library. And it will be a great library.
An amazing Greek library. No one will know another language but us.
Extra flammable.
Yeah. My college was also just Shakespeare.
Oh, cool.
Like that's all we did, and then we were able to do our own plays, like not write our own, but like we found another one as our senior project.
Yeah.
And you weren't allowed to pick anything that was written after 1700.
This is the weirdest school. This is so weird, but at least you got a good Shakespeare base.
Nah, I fought right against it.
Oh,
I'm a rebel, a loner. You know, I was like, my play's was written in 1994, and they're like, no, and I was like, too bad, I'm doing it.
Oh,
and they were like, I got in so much trouble.
You're not going to walk in graduation.
Yeah, my theater degree won't mean anything now. I was like,
what play did you do? Last of the Red Hot Lovers?
No, I did Death and the Maiden, which was a play about the Chilean revolution that essentially the U.S. caused. So I was like, yeah, guys, my whole thesis was essentially about how the U.S. ruined Chile. And I was like, I wrote this deeply political thesis and then put this up on stage. They made me rewrite it. Because they were like, somehow 20-year-old me somehow had an ability that this 50-year-old novelist and playwright did not know. I was like, I'm pretty sure Ariel Dorfman knows what he's doing. He's written tons of stuff. Yeah. He's a big deal. Oh, no, I have to... Okay, great.
No, it's like me going to Chicago and thinking everyone should know who Welcome Jury is. Fuck you. Who are you?
But in Austin, if you don't, you're kind of not connected, right?
Yeah. Or you started recently.
Well, I'm one of those people who like comes in and tries to figure out what the world is and then puts myself in it. So it was like, tell me everything about Austin improv and then I'll take a class. Yeah. But of course, I was like, let's be clear. Everybody knows I didn't ask enough questions. But
no comment.
Indeed. Yeah. But as far as your current state of performance and like stuff that you're working on, you're doing available cup holders occasionally, and you're teaching with your. Oh, you're writing a play. Is that your focus right now?
Yeah.
Great.
My friend and I, Mike DeLonzo, who actually was in that first group of people that auditioned for Theater Sports in '98. He was in LA for a while, and now he's back, and we're writing this play. About once a week we meet and we read it a little bit, and there's actually a Don McLean joke in it.
All right, good.
Excellent.
Tie that back. But the play it came from the Austin bomber, you know, the guy recently who had set off 6 bombs or whatever. The day that they caught him, I was like, God, this, you know, I need to write something about this because I'm just really feeling this really hard. And so we met later that day and we just started working on it. And so it's about 2 guys who are brothers who are in a cabin, and you find out slowly. At first we wanted you to kind of like fall in love with them. So they're funny and they interact, you know, pretty normally, but like you can tell that they know each other really well and that it's a good interaction. And then you start to slowly realize that they are actually holed up in this cabin and they've got bombs around the city and the bombs are going off. And it turns out these guys are conservative nut jobs. Mm-hmm. And at the end, they blow themselves up because the cops are all around them. So my friend and I, you know, we're trying to write them in a way that the audience likes them, and then they have to decide later, do I not like them anymore because of their political stance? Mm. So we're trying to like make these conservative guys likable, and we're having some problems. Well, at certain parts. I mean, these guys are murderers.
Definitely. Yeah, I was gonna say the murdering stance is the part that
that's kind of a lot of people can't get over that.
That's gonna be a big hurdle.
But that's why we're trying to write this big thing that's like, you know, 80 minutes or whatever, so you can really get to know them really well, and then we want the audience to have to like make a choice.
Interesting.
And it's going pretty well. I mean, we're a little bit stalled because the summer throws off our schedule, but we're gonna have a reading with a bunch of people, and you know, like people we know who like theater stuff, and get some feedback, and then probably put it up somewhere at some point.
Yeah. It seems like the perfect time for that kind of thing, though.
I think it's I don't usually work on things that are timely, like satire. That's
but
not,
it could
not
last
my wheelhouse at all.
but it could last for a long, long time. I think the idea of feeling empathy for a person you consider an enemy is a forever thing.
Yeah, and like you said, it's more important now.
Well, it also would be interesting for you to do Q&As to find out how people react to it after.
Yeah, totally.
Because, one of the first gigs I ever had was a play. It was a tour through Maine of a play that was an allegory about heroin abuse.
Ooh, yeah, that's
because
a hotbed.
Apparently Maine has a huge heroin problem.
Yeah.
And the guy who wrote it, his brother died of heroin overdose. So he wrote it about these two brothers having a hard time getting along, and things don't go well.
Damn.
But it's fishing that you get as you go along. That's what is the heroine of it,
Nice, yeah.
And you watch it. And we did tours, and the whole audience would be people that were affected by heroin, whether their family, they're Al-Anon, or they're recovering or whatever. And we toured with it all over. They would do the play, and they'd do a Q&A after. And I learned so much about just the way theater affects people, and the way that, these people felt like their story was being told, and they had such a hard time, and they're like, I started heroin because I felt like I was alone. If I had seen this beforehand, maybe I wouldn't have gone as far as I did. And it was like, wow, isn't that just the case? And I wonder if part of what your thing will be is the people who are having a hard time reconciling enemies versus friends when there's such a weird line is will anyone have an epiphany that changes their mind in some way? I wonder.
I don't know, but
I mean, not to say I'd love to be a conservative who blows people up, but it's perhaps I should have.
Yeah, don't jump all the way in.
I'd hate for her to come back around man, I wish she was out bombing people.
Well, but just to be open to the empathy that is, I want to open my heart to this person so that they don't feel like they have to get so far in their anger to make the move. It's if we can have an open conversation, maybe we don't have to then make bombs.
And like you were saying earlier, it's not all black and white.
Yeah.
There's tons of gray. And yes, if somebody had talked to these guys, there's obviously there's plenty in there about dad because it's two men. But if someone had just, I guess I need to research the actual guy a little more.
Maybe, or many different guys.
Yeah.
There's been all sorts of people that have gone out there and felt they were doing the right thing when they bombed people, thinking, oh, I'm making a move that's a good move.
I think what most of their motivation is, no one's listening to me, so this is how I get their attention. And this is how, so we write a manifesto, and all that. So I want to call attention to this problem. And it's so important to me that even if I kill people, that's, you got to break an egg to make an omelet, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thinking of it.
Yeah.
And
so fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love that you're so creative that you found a way to put it in every part of every job that you've told us about, all the nooks and crannies of your adventure over the years. And now, even though you're focused on helping these kids learn some theater, you're also deeply involved in, putting some theater out there that'll help our current culture. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Good on you.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yay.
Some people have hit a wall with what's going on in the world where they say, how can I be creative when this is what's going on? And for me, it's what's fueling me right now. Right now I'm
exactly.
Oh, but what do I think the world needs to learn? And then I try to write it into stuff that I'm doing. Or I try to talk to the kids about it and go, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah.
And they've had some interesting ideas that have really opened my brain. So I'm people, no matter where they're at or what's going on, they have a point of view, and it's important to try to acknowledge all of them.
Yeah, well, when 9/11 happened, I just thought, this is obviously horrible, but we'll probably get some good art out of it.
Yeah.
Those big kind
That's how I feel about
traumatic
Trump.
moments.
Yeah. I'm
Trump,
I was like, guys, we're going to have the best art. We are going to unite ourselves in this art.
And that's what happened in the 80s, too, under Reagan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the people who are empathetic, who are generally the artists, when they're being the most oppressed is when they do the best work. So that's why I voted for Trump.
What a perfect end to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Jeremy, so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
This has been great.
Yeah, really awesome. And enjoy the rest of your day. I hope your cramps clear up.
Well, I was going to say sorry about your kidneys.
I hope your kidneys go back in your body.
Do not weep for my kidneys.
That seems fine. The youngest among us, and
they are free now.
Half dead.
They're free. They're going to end up on my plate. Kidney nuggets. Kidney fingers.
All right. Thank you, audience, for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Michelle, marry me.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening to Yes But Why podcast.